Hey guys, welcome back to 2 weeks straight of Doctor Who. Now, we are ranking every episode in New Who. That is Doctor Who since its 2005 revival. We have already done 3 episodes where we ranked every episode of Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, all on a tier list. And today we are on episode 4 doing Series 4. That is the New Who series that aired in 2008, starring David Tennant and Catherine Tate as Donna Noble. Now, we are also including the 2007 Christmas special, Voyage of the Damned, which fits well in Series 4 rather than Series 3. And we will also be including all 5 Tennant specials. That's The Next Doctor, Planet of the Dead, Waters of Mars, and both parts of The End of Time after Series 4. I think it just fits the overall feel of Series 4. It fits to have them together with Series 4 rather than in their own separate episodes. So if I do the math correctly, that is 19 episodes. Now ignore the fact that when I uploaded these pictures, several of them had doubles. So it looks like there's a lot of pictures here. There's only 19 episodes in this collection that we have here. But let's start from bottom to top like we have been. And we are going to start all the way at the bottom with Planet of the Dead. Now, this episode, a lot of fans are nostalgic for this episode. It was the first Doctor Who episode that ever aired in high definition. This was the Easter special in the year 2009, the second of the 5 Tennant specials to air. It looks really pretty. I'll give them that. They did location filming in Dubai. There's a huge supporting cast, including Daniel Kaluuya from things like Get Out and Black Panther and Black Mirror. This was kind of his first big breakout role, similar to someone like Andrew Garfield we talked about last episode in Series 3, made his kind of big debut in Doctor Who. Same with Daniel Kaluuya here. This episode isn't good. The stuff between the Doctor and Lady Christina de Souza is not as good as people remember. The flirting is very one note. The chemistry isn't really there. A lot of people after this episode aired were like, "Oh, bring back Lady Christina." It's not as good as you remember. I think part of the reason people think of this episode so fondly is because it looks so good. It's nostalgic for them, and it was one of the few episodes that aired in 2009. The fact that they took kind of a year off from the entire regular feel of the show, a lot of people are very nostalgic for it, but the plot is poor, the special effects are poor, nothing really happens in this episode. It is super boring. The threat is really one note. It's these like stingrays that eat everything. There isn't really a primary villain. There isn't really a conflict. There is just like this premonition hanging over the Doctor. But when I say that nothing happens in this episode, that is basically as well as I can sum this episode up. Feel free to watch it in your own time. It will be a waste of an hour or an hour and a half or however long this episode is. I don't like this episode. Every time I have to rewatch it in a full series rewatch, it bores the hell out of me. This is a boring episode. It is absolutely the bottom of all 19 of these episodes. We are going to move on then. That is the only episode that I have in the very, very bottom garbage F tier. But we will move up then to The Doctor's Daughter. Now, a lot of people are also very fond of this episode, very nostalgic for this episode. Obviously, this is the probably the most well-known fact in all of Doctor Who, the fact that this character, Jenny, the Doctor's daughter, is played by an actual Doctor's daughter, Peter Davison, the 5th Doctor. This is his actual biological daughter, and yes, that same daughter is also married to David Tennant. And so not only is she a Doctor's daughter in the show, not only is she a Doctor's daughter in real life, but yes, she is a Doctor's wife as well. Timey-wimey, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows that. She is charming. She is a fun addition to the team. If you've seen my Series 3 episode ranking where I talk about how I don't like the development of Martha Jones as a character, Series 4 doesn't do Martha any better. Series 4 continues to kind of butcher that momentum that Martha Jones had in her first couple episodes in Series 3. Her appearances in Series 4 are also really poor. She has an entire side quest in this episode that would have probably been better with any other companion. It didn't really fit her. Freema Agyeman does what she can with the material she's given, but Martha is not written as a very likable character in this episode. She is very whiny. She's very all over the place. She feels like an addition that didn't need to happen. This episode would have been better if it were just David Tennant as the 10th Doctor and Donna Noble, but they added a third companion to the TARDIS crew, and it kind of pulls from the team chemistry. It doesn't really add anything. I don't like Martha's inclusion, if that wasn't already clear by me saying it 3 or 4 times already. I don't think any of the side characters other than Jenny are very well realized. I think the Hath are a cool idea. But like this plot falls short for me. It's kind of this cool concept, right? Where basically this war hasn't been going on as long as people think it has. And it's just like this oral tradition that's been handed down. And these two factions just fight each other because their forefathers told them to fight each other. If you want that done better, or mostly that second part where people only fight because their parents tell them to fight. If you want to see that done better, go watch House of the Dragon. This episode doesn't do it very well. Joe Dempsey is in this episode, which I always forget about. He's Gendry in Game of Thrones. He appears in this episode as kind of one of his first big breakout roles, but I don't have really any fondness for this episode. It is also boring. It's cool atmospherically, but I don't get anything out of this episode, and the ending is really, really, I think, a poor ending. I think having Jenny be able to come back to life, but then the fact we never see her again is... I feel the same way about the final 3 minutes of this episode as I do about the final 3 minutes of Blink. I think it takes away from the rest of the episode, and this episode already isn't good to begin with, and so I am putting it bottom of D tier. We move up now to the other two-parter that, well... She's featured in quite a few episodes in this series, actually, but the two-parter right before this is the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky. Now, in my most recent rewatch, I actually like this episode a little bit better than I did the first time I watched it. I am going to put... Which one do I put higher than the other? I think I put the Sontaran Stratagem higher than the Poison Sky. I think... The second half doesn't fumble the concept, but I think the first half of the episode sets up this really big threat that the second half doesn't quite deliver on. It's still fairly boring. The Sontarans have never been my favorite villains. I've always liked them more as comedy characters. I think they work better as comedy characters. Just they have never looked as threatening as they did in the classic series, in the new series, including Series 13. I don't take the threat very seriously. I think all of the stuff with Unit and Martha is very lackluster. I don't connect with it very well. I don't like it very much. The stuff that has grown on me, actually, and I can't remember the kid's name, but basically the scientist who helps the Sontarans, this child prodigy, I always thought he was kind of this whiny, loser character. I don't want to watch him kind of thing. And in my most recent rewatch, I actually connected with him a little more than I thought I would. I understood his character a little more. I appreciated the writing of his character that much more. But these two still fall short for me. I think it's a waste of 2 episodes. Genuinely, and I don't like that they brought Martha back for Series 4 as early as they did. I think it takes away from that early Catherine Tate run, and I think that might be why the momentum in Series 4 doesn't pick up until a few episodes later on. But we will talk about that as we move up, because Series 4 is fantastic. But we are going to move up now to the C tier. We're all the way up to the C tier already, and we are going to do the Next Doctor. So this is the Christmas special that aired in 2008. This was right after David Tennant had announced that he was leaving the role. So this, basically the entire attraction people had to this episode was this bait and switch, that they thought this was literally going to reveal who the next Doctor was. And obviously David Tennant would stay on for another year before Matt Smith would take over the role. We see David Morrissey in the role as Jackson Lake, who is basically this man who, through some very tragic events in his life, comes to like this realization through a chance encounter with a fob watch, believes that he is the Doctor. David Morrissey's fantastic. If you've never seen The Walking Dead, he plays the governor in The Walking Dead. It's one of the best villains in that show. He is great in this role, to the point where people were actually hoping that he would take over the role. It had been rumored for years, since the 90s, I think, that David Morrissey was in the front running to be in contention for the next Doctor. And so the fact they brought him into this role was very realistic, a very realistic casting choice. This episode kind of falls flat in its delivery. The concept is cool. We have Cybermen in Victorian London. This was kind of the first real I shouldn't say that, but like, you saw it especially in the Stephen Moffat era, right? Where the Victorian era showed up all the time. Now, we had the Victorian era kind of in Series 1 with like the Unquiet Dead, and then the Victorian era in Series 2 with Tooth and Claw, excuse me. And I'm trying to think, I can't remember off the top of my head if there was one in Series 3, but this was really where like that trend started to kick in. A lot of Victorian episodes going forward into Series 5, 6, 7, 8. This one, for me, what falls flat about it is the villains aren't very well realized. I can't remember who, the widow character, the main villainous character of this episode, just kind of falls flat. She's very menacing at the start, but her character doesn't really develop. We get this kind of tragic atmosphere where she's taken, or this tragic end to the episode where she is taken over by the Cybermen, and they kind of go against their plot to assist each other. The Cybermen don't really fit in Victorian London. You have this concept of like the Cyber Shade, which is this cyber converted, I think they say it's a dog, or at least some kind of animal. That doesn't really make sense conceptually with what the Cybermen stand for. And the other character who falls really flat for me is Rosita, and that's Jackson Lake's like fake companion. I don't think she was very well written at all. I think she is just kind of there to be this companion piece. We don't really get any exploration of her character. All of the Jackson Lake stuff, as soon as it's revealed who he is, I think is really boring. You see the Doctor save his son instead of him save his son. There's just writing elements that don't click for me in this episode. Very middle tier. It's cool atmospherically. Like I said, this was a Victorian episode before we got sick of Victorian episodes, but everything about it just kind of falls flat for me. So I am placing it firmly in C tier. Now, that is our only episode in C tier, which tells you how good Series 4 is. We are moving all the way up to B tier now, and let me just double check and make sure I have that correct. I believe that is correct. So we are moving all the way up then to B tier, and at the bottom of B tier, I am putting Planet of the Ood. I like the Ood better first of all, Impossible Planet Satan Pit, I think, is a better episode than Planet of the Ood. But I do like this whole concept of like a slave race being exploited. This corporate idea where a corporation has essentially taken over an entire species and exploited them to the point that nature is starting to revert itself. I think that's a really cool concept. I think it's done really well. Atmospherically, this is a weird episode. I have always like compared the setting of this episode to if you'll follow my logic here, if you're familiar with like Modern Warfare 2, there's an episode, there's a map I think called Derailed, and there's a map called Subbase. This is the original Modern Warfare 2 from like 2008, 2009. No, later than that. I have my dates wrong. Anyways, the original Modern Warfare 2, there's a very specific set of maps that I always think of with this episode, and it's always weird to me to... I don't know where I'm going with that thought. Anyways, I like the setting, is what I'm trying to say here. I think it's cool to have this factory and headquarters at this plant in a snowy planet. It's very cool atmospherically. You have that weird, almost poor CGI shot of the spaceship overhead, but I think it does wonders to add to kind of the banter that the Doctor and Donna have at the beginning of this episode. This is when their chemistry is really starting to come into their own. This is the episode where Donna shines. She really starts to break out into her new developing form, where she really starts to care about people. We saw it in the previous episode when she demands that the Doctor save the family in Pompeii. But this is where she really starts to stick to that character, and the character change really starts to propel itself forward. The supporting cast, I don't like. I've never been huge into. Like, I don't really remember any of the characters outside of the Ood characters, and I think that's kind of the important part. But if you've seen my quiz videos where I try to go through like random side characters in Doctor Who, none of these characters are memorable for me. I do know one of like the Doctor characters, the scientist characters in this episode, is played by I think his name is, oh gosh, his last name is Adrian Rollins, and he plays James Potter in Harry Potter, which I've always thought is funny because he's just very different characters. Obviously that's what actors do, but I've always thought that was a fun little connection between two things that I really like. The scene where the main, is it the CEO or whoever the main villain guy is of the Ood Corporation, where he turns physically into an Ood, I think is like not quite body horror, but it's like gruesome to watch. As a kid, I can't imagine what this would look like on TV. I think it's like bizarre to watch now, even as an adult male who's seen this episode several times. The things that I don't like about this episode necessarily, I don't like the red eye concept. I don't like the idea of turning the Ood into a feral race. I think this episode would work a lot better in its execution if the Ood were just protesting this whole concept of them being enslaved by this corporation, taken advantage of by this corporation. I don't think turning them into like literal feral monsters does it as well as it would have if they would have kept kind of their dignity and their ability to not even just peacefully protest, but fight back on their own accord, rather than having this weird like supernatural element to it. I've always thought that was kind of weird, but this episode is good. I think it sits firmly bottom of B tier for me. And then right above that, actually, in my rankings, is Voyage of the Damned. Now, this is the 2007 Christmas special. I keep getting those dates wrong, but it always throws me off when the Christmas specials actually aired, because they always feel like they air the year later. But this was the 2007 Christmas special. Basically, the Titanic in space. A lot of people love this episode, and I used to really like this episode, and I still do like this episode, but there are, like, it does drag. I think Kylie Minogue in this role as Astrid Peth is one of the best one-off companions we've had alongside the Doctor. Her chemistry with the Doctor is fantastic, especially in comparison to someone like Lady Christina D'Souza in Planet of the Dead. I think all of the stuff with Max Capricorn is a little sluggish. I think the villain, like the Heavenly Host villains, are a little under-realized. I think it's kind of this like Avengers idea, where the more you add of a certain villain, just kind of this non-sentient, like, fight off these robots or fight off these aliens, kind of, it minimizes the threat, is what I'm trying to say here. I'm kind of stumbling on my words in this episode, so I do apologize. But I think the fact that there's so many of these Heavenly Host characters really diminishes their overall impact as a threat. I like the stuff with Alonzo, I like the stuff with, like I said, all of the side characters in this episode are really well developed, actually. Banacafala, Banacad, the little fella, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Astrid, the poor fat couple, for lack of a better term. That's how they are described by the other patrons in this episode. I think what's the name of the tour? Names are escaping me in this episode, but I think all of the side characters are really well developed. Yeah, like I said, the only real thing I have wrong with this episode is I think it starts to drag, especially as you get toward the end there. It goes on for a very long time, it feels like. And so that's my only real mega criticism of this episode. It does also introduce us to Wilf, which is a nice addition. Moving up then to Partners in Crime. This is also going in B tier. So Partners in Crime is a fantastic episode. And the only reason I have it as low as B tier is simply because the stakes don't feel very high, especially with the design of the adipose monsters. But great performances all around, even from like Miss Foster. I can't remember the actress's name who plays her, but like all of the performances in this episode, including like the side cast, are phenomenal. The comedy is great. The physical comedy is hilarious. The chemistry between David Tennant and Catherine Tate is coming off at an all-time high right off the bat. But yeah, the only thing I really have to say negative about this is the stakes don't feel super high, despite the fact that like the entire planet could be at stake. It's just not really felt because of the design of these characters. So I think it sits firmly in B tier. Then we are going to move up now to The Unicorn and the Wasp, and this is also staying in B tier. Now, this is the Agatha Christie episode, and I like my feelings toward this episode are almost exactly the same as Partners in Crime. I think the cast of characters is phenomenal, even if some of them aren't as developed in this one as I would have liked them to be. You see Felicity Jones in this episode in kind of her first big breakout role. The comedy between the Doctor and Donna is fantastic. The kitchen scene is one of the funniest bits in Doctor Who, but the stakes don't feel super high. You get this Agatha Christie mystery that's very well realized on screen, very well adapted, and the chemistry between the characters is great. The chemistry between Agatha Christie and the Doctor and Donna all together, they play off each other really well. Great casting, but like I said, the stakes just don't feel super high. This feels very inconsequential, and this is the episode. Like, I like this episode, so when I want to watch The Run, and we'll talk about The Run as we move up this list, but when I want to watch The Run, I do always start with the Agatha Christie episode. It's not quite to the level of all of those episodes that follow it, but it does set the tone very well. I like this episode a lot. Then we are going to move up to The Fires of Pompeii. B tier is going to be kind of packed. Now, a lot of people are going to be mad at me for putting The Fires of Pompeii this low. There's a couple reasons I have it this low, but let's dive into the episode. So, I love the fact that they have added these elements, and I'm going to try not to steal takes from Rich Hudson and his fiancée Amy, because they did a fantastic analysis of this episode on their Escaping Kasterborous podcast. Go check that out. That is on Rich Hudson's channel. But I think the elements of prophecy that they add in this episode are very well realized in a scientific way. We talked last episode in Series 3 about how the Carianites in the Shakespeare Code are very well realized as a combination between the magical and the scientific, where their magic can always be explained as extraterrestrial science. I like that about the prophecy in this episode, where all of these prophetic elements basically come down to, I'm trying to remember what exactly they explain it. It's almost like a genetic memory that is forced by the pyroviles onto these seers or onto these fortune tellers. I think the realization, the visual effects realization of the High Priestess is very well done. The Pyroviles, not so much, but you do feel a threat from them. You do feel a massive threat caused by the Pyroviles in this episode that you don't feel with something like Unicorn and the Wasp or Partners in Crime. And you do see like very emotional repercussions for Donna, for the Doctor, and obviously this is explored later when Peter Capaldi returns to the show. He is obviously in this episode as Caecilius, or Caecilius. I'm trying to remember how they pronounce it in the episode, actually. I think it might be Caecilius. My bad if I am pronouncing it wrong. And we also do see Karen Gillan in a very small role in this episode. So if you didn't know she was there, that's okay. Like, she doesn't play a major part in this story whatsoever. I think the cast is great. I think like I said, the special effects, specifically in the Council of the Sibylline, or the what do they call themselves? The Sisterhood of the Sibylline, is very well realized. The Vesuvius scene is very well realized. Why don't I have it higher? So when I say that the Pyroviles don't feel, when the Pyroviles do feel like a huge threat, they do. But part of it is that, like I said, that Avengers effect. The more of them you add, the more ambiguous you make the species in numbers and size and individual threat. I think it lessens the threat of an individual character, and we don't see individual characters necessarily of these people. I think the stuff with Caecilius's family is a little underdeveloped. I think like all of the stuff with his son and with his wife and with their daughter, I think could be developed just that much further to propel it forward. Basically, they just kind of serve as an insight to the sisterhood. They don't, to me, feel like solid characters in their own end, except for Peter Capaldi in his role. But I would say that's the only thing keeping it out of A tier for me. It's a solid episode, don't get me wrong. But I don't love this episode as much as the episodes above it. Moving up then, this is on my overall list, but top of B tier, and it's still B tier, I am going to put Both Halves of The End of Time. Now, The End of Time Part 1 is really boring, to the point where I'm actually going to drop it to C tier. Bottom of C tier. I'm going to separate these. They're not separated on my original list, so I do have to go back and readjust these. But The End of Time Part 1, nothing happens. It sets up this threat, this very ambiguous threat of both like the Master and the Time Lords, but this episode really doesn't get going until Part 2. All of the fun stuff in this two-parter happens in Part 2. The first part is basically a scavenger hunt by Wilf and his friends. It's this very ambiguous prophecy. It's all of the stuff with John Sim as the worst version of the Master. This whole, like, if you, as a wrestling fan, like, I always think of the wrestler Ryback in 2013 when he had the "Feed Me More" chant. This is the "Feed Me More" Master. This is the Ryback Master, where all he wants to do is eat. John Sim is doing everything he can with the material he's given, and I hate it in both sense. I think his performance is poor, even given what he's given. Like, he's way too over the top. He's always been over the top for me, but he's at his worst in this episode for me. But Part 2, you get all of the great stuff, the emotional weight between the Doctor's relationship with the Master, the Doctor's relationship with the Time Lords, and then, of course, we have the final goodbye of the 10th Doctor. We have him sacrificing himself for Wilf. That moment... So I talked last episode about David Tennant's best performance in Doctor Who is in The Family of Blood, the episode The Family of Blood. But I think his best acting without speaking is the 5 seconds where he realizes that he has won. and he's on the floor. He's covered in like cuts and bruises, broken glass all over the floor, and he realizes he's won, and he's just elated. And all of a sudden, we hear the 4 knocks, and the music drops. And from a cinematic standpoint, from a music standpoint, from an atmospheric standpoint, from an acting standpoint, David Tennant just encapsulates this moment so perfectly with his facial expressions. His acting in that scene alone is enough to make me want to put this episode in A tier. Obviously, like the first half of this episode is also kind of slow. It's not a good finale for the 10th Doctor, in my opinion. We do get the fun stuff with all the companions at the end. I don't like the Martha Mickey stuff. I think that scene is a little weird. I do like all of like the Donna stuff, the Jack stuff, and even the Rose scene. I think is really great. It's a cool culmination, and I think it is earned. A lot of people have issue with his final line. A lot of people love his final line. I'm kind of right in the middle. I think it fits this Doctor. I don't have any huge problems with it. I think it's a little campy, but I don't like. It doesn't take away my enjoyment from this episode. Most of why this sits solidly in B tier is the last third of this episode is great. The first 2/3 of this episode are a little slow as well. So I think it sits solidly at the top of B tier there. Now we are going to move up to A tier, and let's do my counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 7 episodes in Series 4 and the encompassing specials that sit above B tier. And that should show you how good this is. In my opinion, and this is a spoiler for the upcoming episode where I rank all of the seasons, Season 4 is well and above the best season of New Who. It might even be the best season of Doctor Who as a whole. There are a few duds, especially right in the middle of the beginning of Series 4, but once we start the run, things get going. And if you're unfamiliar with the run is basically the fan word for, or the fan term for, is it 6 episodes? So as soon as Unicorn and the Wasp is over, we have Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, Midnight, Turn Left, Stolen Earth, Journey's End. Back to back to back to back to back to back. And so essentially this is the best continuous run of multiple episodes that the show has ever seen. And so fans refer to it as the run. And that's why, like, I like Unicorn and the Wasp, but all of the ones that follow it do significantly surpass it in quality. So at the bottom of the run, I'm going to put the finale, actually, Stolen Earth and Journey's End. So let's see, Stolen Earth. I'm going to put Stolen Earth at the bottom here of A tier and Journey's End right above it. Journey's End kind of fumbles the threat. Not fumbles, but subverts the threat a little bit. There's kind of this, it's not a Deus Ex Machina, but very much a writing cop-out where they kind of wrote their own rules to get themselves out of this threat. The reality bomb is going to destroy the entire reality of the universe. And in order to get out of it, Russell T Davies writes 3 separate doctors being born apart from this meta-crisis. You have the Doctor, you have 10 Part 2, and you have the Dr. Donna. Very weird writing encapsulation, like very weird thing to write yourself out of this story with, which has never quite worked for me. The threat is really well built up in the first half of the episode, but all of like the really fun stuff happens in the second half, especially all of the stuff with the companions meeting each other, getting to fly the TARDIS home, getting to interact with the Doctor, and then of course one of the most heartbreaking scenes in all of Doctor Who, what is essentially the death of Donna, right? The death of Donna as we know her. She reverts back to herself before she met the Doctor, before she became a part of this world, before she changed for the better. And that is always heartbreaking. So I think that's why this sits above the first half. Why is it as low as it is? To me, it's a matter of, like I said, the writing doesn't necessarily fumble the ending, but it doesn't support itself as well as it should. And it's mostly this idea of them writing themselves out of a hole by creating 3 separate doctors, something that's never been seen before, something that will never happen again, blah, blah, blah. They wrote their own rules. Also, simply because all of the other episodes above it are better than it. And that's literally the best reason I can give for why it is where it is. So, that being said, I think they're great episodes, but they're sitting bottom of A tier for me. Then we are going to move up to all the way up to S tier. Am I right about that? Hold on. We have 4 left, right? Yeah. Every single one of them sits in S tier for me. And pretty high up in S tier. So we have 4 episodes left. And actually, no, 5 episodes left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 5 episodes left. And they're all S tier. And the bottom of that S tier for me is Forest of the Dead. Now, why is Forest of the Dead as low as, or bottom of S tier, I should say? It's S tier. It's one of the best episodes in Doctor Who, in my opinion. Why is it the bottom of these? I think it is lesser than the first half of the episode because the first half of the two-parter really sets up this concept of the threat, the Vashta Nerada. And I know that I've said the thing about the Avengers effect, where the more ambiguous you leave numbers, the less the threat becomes. However, in this episode, that is kind of flipped on its head for the sake of we don't know enough about the Vashta Nerada, so they stay a huge threat, they stay scary, and we also see what they can do. Whereas the other villains on this list, we don't necessarily see the threat that they pose, we just understand that it is a threat. The Vashta Nerada are portrayed to us what they can do very early on. And I think the tension and the horror in the first part of this episode is better than the payoff in the second half of the episode. The payoff is great, but I think the tension in the first half is just that much better than the second half. I don't love the stuff outside of the library. It's a cool concept, the dream sequence with Donna, but it has never connected with me in the way that I quite want it to, and quite the way the library does for me. So I like the library half of this two-parter better than the home life half of this two-parter, but they're both S tier. They're both phenomenal episodes. Right above that, I have Midnight. Now, a lot of people think Midnight is the best episode of Doctor Who. David Tennant's acting is phenomenal. This threat of this unknown being that is taking the Doctor's greatest skill away from him, and that is his ability to talk himself out of situations. We see that Doctor's skill flipped on its head. We see mob mentality take over. We see the Doctor unable to defend himself, and all of the things that he usually uses to defend himself are backfiring. People turn against him because of his intelligence. The tension in this episode is off the charts. The best. No, I won't make that comparison, but if you've never seen Midnight, this is one of those episodes where people say if you want to get someone into Doctor Who, have them watch Midnight. This is the show at its best. I mean, everything about the world building in this episode, about the ambiguity of the villain in this episode, about the threat that this villain poses, you physically see it in both the acting and what the chemistry of the supporting characters are doing in this episode. Everything that goes into the writing of this episode is almost picture perfect. The only thing I would say about this is I wish some of the supporting characters were a little more developed. We understand the professor and Penny is his sidekick named Penny. The stewardess, Sky Silvestri, Jethro. I wish we understood all of them a little bit more. That is my only criticism. This is my 6th favorite Doctor Who episode of all time. And I think it sits firmly right in the middle of S tier. And then we have 2 more episodes in Series 4 slash the specials that sit right above it. And right above this one for me is Turn Left. Now, why I like Turn Left more than Midnight, a few things. I like Donna a lot. I like Donna's development a lot. What this episode does is basically... So a lot of shows do this thing where they show like their greatest hits. They have like a greatest hits episode right before the finale. And this episode basically serves as a greatest hits episode for the Russell T Davies era right before Series 4 concludes. But with the added twist, like it's not just a greatest hits, it adds this whole plot element of Donna's character development. And what would have happened had she never met the Doctor, both to herself, not just both, but trifold. What would happen to herself and her family, what would happen to the Doctor, and what would happen to the world. And all 3 of these elements are wrapped together almost seamlessly. Catherine Tate's acting is the best it's ever been in this episode. The stuff with her family, with Wilf and Sylvia, is phenomenal. I know I use the word phenomenal a lot, but I love this episode so much. I think the chemistry between Catherine Tate and Billie Piper is like an unforeseen masterpiece. Like, I don't think fans ever could have expected that these 2 companions would play off of each other so well. Their chemistry is phenomenal. All of the... I love this. The stuff with like the hinting at concentration camps, this whole fascist United Kingdom idea and concept, and the way that that's relayed to the audience, not really by telling them exactly what's happening, but in the reaction of certain characters. The writing is phenomenal. I love this episode. Phenomenal is the word I'm going to use. That's my favorite word to use, especially when relating to this episode. But there is one in Series 4 and the specials that goes above all of these other ones. This is my 3rd favorite Doctor Who episode of all time. And it is it's not even it just aired. I think it aired on a random Saturday in August. I could be wrong about that date, but just a very random special. And it was the last special before the finale 2-parter of David Tennant's 10th Doctor in the Russell T Davies era, and this is Waters of Mars. This is an episode that the first time I watched Doctor Who, I skipped, because I was at the point where I was getting to the end of the David Tennant era, and I got done with season 4, and there were a bunch of specials, and the first 2 were really boring, and so I skipped Waters of Mars to get to Matt Smith. That was a mistake. This episode, the way that it plays with the concepts that have been teased in the entire Series 4 and the entire 10th Doctor run about the Doctor being the last of his species and having this control over his destiny and over other people's destiny, is so well portrayed on screen. I don't know how well I can express it without you just going and watching the episode. Let's start with the threat. The threat in this episode is a parasite that lives in the water on Mars, and slowly infects the people who live on a Martian base, an Earth base on Mars. The threat is ambiguous and scary, but we see what it does to people, and we understand what it does and what it would mean if it were to get back on Earth. So it's those 2 concepts I've been talking about this entire episode, where we understand what the threat could do if realized, and we understand what it does in the short term to individuals. Those are 2 halves of the things that I really like when it comes to writing a villain. I think the supporting cast is very well developed. We understand their chemistry. You have a phenomenal cast in here. It's Lindsay Duncan as Adelaide Brooke. You have Gemma Chan is in this episode. I wish we could get to know a few of the kind of the early on dying out supporting characters a little better just to better understand that chemistry. This is an episode that I wish was longer. There are very few episodes in Doctor Who that I wish had another half an hour to play with, but I think this is one of them. There are a lot of really heavy concepts in this episode. This idea of predestination, this idea of knowing what's going to happen and making decisions based on knowing what's going to happen. Whether the Doctor is going to save these people or just let it happen. And him playing with that and him bragging about it is what leads to the tragedy at the end of this episode. The last 5 minutes of this episode are some of the best Doctor Who. Like, I always say that. I love the last... An episode can be made or broken by the last 3 to 5 minutes of an episode. This was already a great episode, and it's made that much better by the final 5 minutes. But we feel this tension building throughout the entire episode over whether or not the Doctor can or will save these people, whether these people know they're going to die, how it's going to be realized, that sort of thing. The world building, the atmosphere of it is very well realized. This whole idea that it's actually taking place on Mars, very well realized visually. I don't have any real holes to pick in this episode other than I wish it could be just a hair longer so that they could just further develop these concepts and not quite make it feel so instantaneously over before the 2-part finale, because it's a phenomenal concept. I think it's very well realized. I think the writing is fantastic. I have all of the praises to sing about this episode. With that being said, this was one of our longer series episodes, and because we had 19 episodes, and I did happen to talk quite a bit about a few of them, so we're going to just rank these backwards. There's 19 of them, so our only episode in F tier in 19th place is Planet of the Dead. We move up to D tier, 18, Doctor's Daughter, 17, Poison Sky, 16, Centauran Stratagem. Move up to C tier, number 15 is End of Time Part 1. Number 14, The Next Doctor. B tier, bottom of B tier, let's see, we are at number 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 is Planet of the Ood. Number 12, Voyage of the Damned. Number 11, Partners in Crime. Number 10, Unicorn and the Wasp. Number 9, Fires of Pompeii. Number 8, make sure I got that right. Number 8, top of B tier, we have End of Time Part 2. Moving up to A tier, number 7, I have The Stolen Earth. Number 6, Journey's End. We move up to S tier. We have 5 episodes in S tier. We have at the bottom, number 5, Forest of the Dead. Number 4, Silence in the Library. Number 3, Midnight. Number 2, Turn Left. And number 1, my favorite episode in Series 4 and the 2009/New Year's 2010 specials, is The Waters of Mars. So let me know what you think of my ranking, what your ranking would be in the comment section below. Check out all of our other rankings so far. Stay tuned. We'll be back here tomorrow with the Series 5 tier list. Check out all of our other Doctor Who episodes and Doctor Who type content over my left shoulder, your bottom right corner. Otherwise, check out the links to the channels above to check out this channel and all of my other ones. But until we see you again, that's all I have for now. Hope to see you very, very soon.